Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Tuesday, October 9th, 2018. I'd like to call the Council as a whole committee to order. Present this evening are Councilors Walsh, Clark, Boschman, Squalia, Green, DiNatale, Fleming, and myself, Councilor Krishmerik. The agenda will consist of the following this evening. 231-18, ordered that there be and hereby is appropriated the Mayor's supplemental fiscal year 2019 operating budget for the general fund in the amount of $469,572 as follows: school expenses $400,000, police building maintenance custodian $1,320, health personal services inspectors $27,144, public health nurse personal services $2,080, building personal services inspectors $26,728, council on aging personal services custodian $1,248, library maintenance custodian $1,052, and lastly a library personal services professional $10,000. Councilors, there was a communication that accompanied this order. Do you have that communication by chance from Calvin? Mark. Councilors, if you prefer, I can read this communication.
Move the reading and be waived.
Second.
Reading will be waived and placed on file. City Clerk's office. Questions for Auditor Brooks. Also with us this evening is interim superintendent. Interim, right? Okay. Superintendent Bob Jokela. I wasn't sure which title we were going with this week, so wanted to make sure. Councilor Boschman.
Mr. Brooks, the auditor. Mr. Brooks, if this council votes $400,000 minus $400,000 to the school expenses, what would happen?
The supplemental budget request is filling in some of the gaps that were left in the original FY 2019 budget, caused by two different factors. The school expense line item of $400,000 is basically to bring us in line with net school spending requirements. When we put together the budget for the City Council back in June, the final figures for net school spending were not out. The state didn't pass a budget until the end of July, and at that point, net school spending figures were out. So that, if that were not appropriated, then we would be underfunding the school budget by about $400,000. The other items are all tied to labor contract settlements, the inspectors union and the library union that were settled late in June after the budget had been already pretty much approved by City Council.
Mr. President, can I have Mr. Jockler up there too? Because I asked for a meeting with him before, remember, a month and a half ago?
Councilor Boschman, yes. I would like to invite acting superintendent Bob Jokela. Got it right this time. Councilor Boschman.
Good evening.
During the summer, I happened to pick up the Sentinel Enterprise, and the school was going to be delayed for a couple of days due to the simple fact that we had a problem with mold in the city of Pittsburgh school, the high school.
Mm-hmm.
Are the chillers working? And is there a maintenance program on those chillers?
Well, the chillers were working. The chillers were not probably working at 100%. That's been an item on our listing of capital to fix and is in the process of being fixed right now. It's about $43,000 to fix that.
But why wasn't it fixed prior? I mean, why did we wait to mold to come in? That's number one.
Let me clarify. Based on the environmental experts, the chillers had, whether they were working at 100% or not, there is no correlation between that and the mold. Okay, chillers are not an air conditioning system. What caused the mold is this summer we had record humidity and record heat. In Boston, in August alone, they had 40 days of dew point over 70. And I think they had 19 days over 90. Another district, I'll say west of us, was closed for a much longer period of time, and the costs were much more extensive. So,
All right. Now, the other thing, part of this question, Mr. President, I talked to you a little bit, but you left. At the last council meeting, you were sitting right over there, and I asked you about Crocker Elementary School, and I understand that we appropriate $1 million. I don't understand all that, and we're getting back $800,000. But I also understand, what I don't understand is that we're still farming out the kids to St. Anthony's School. Our school's not gonna be ready. And we're investing all, the city, not the city, but the insurance company's investing a lot of money. Probably millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds, maybe a million, a couple
not hundreds of millions of
no,
dollars.
You know what I mean, millions of dollars to fix it, to get it up to par. And then we're taking a study, and we want to tear it down. That's the goal. Let's face the facts. That's our goal.
Councilor Boishman, that's not the item in front of us.
Yeah, but it has the same thing, because nothing's changing. We're giving money after money after money, and nothing is changing. The school system is still the same. If you were the superintendent, how are we going to change the school with $400,000 to improve it? To improve I read the paper, and the scores are down. I read the paper, this is broken. I read the paper, that's broken. Nothing's changing. Nothing. And I'm trying to sell the city of Fitchburg for a better place, and nothing is changing.
Councilor Boishman, there's $469,572 in front of us.
400,000 is not going to be passed.
Of which $400,000 is being allocated to schools. If you have questions about that $400,000 and how it's being allocated, by all means.
It has to do with the whole school system, sir. It has to go with education. Net school spending, right?
Councilor Boishman, that's not in front of us. The $400,000 is.
Mr. Drogba, I'm not picking on you, but I like to see some changes. If you're going to be a superintendent, I like to see some changes in the school system. We need the changes. It affects our city. It affects our city. Believe it or not, it affects it. One way or another, it affects. When you're reading in the paper, this broke, that broke, this broke, or the education's not there, it affects us. It affects the resale. It affects businesses from coming in. They don't want to come in because of our school system. And everybody says, I shouldn't talk this way. Well, it's true. I get kids, and they get kids. And you ought to hear what they tell me. So if they're telling me that, all right. I'm sorry if you get upset with me, but I'm just telling you facts. I'm here to sell the city.
Councilor Squalia.
Okay, starting with the schools, segueing off Councilor Boishman. We had an increase in in Chapter 70 funding for the schools. How much approximately was that?
You know what, it's publicly on the DESE website. I don't have that amount off the top of my head, Councilor Squalia. The key number for us is really our direct spending budget. The increase in Chapter 70 net school spending number is for both the direct spending and indirect spending costs, which add up to total net school spending.
Correct.
So we're increasing the budget on the net school spending side by $400,000, and that'll get us to net school spending.
Correct.
That's what we estimate it to be, yes.
And I noted, I see it noted in Mr. Brooks's letter that this additional amount will enable the city to continue to meet net school spending requirements and assist the school department with staffing and funding to meet the increasing social and emotional needs of students and to deal with unforeseen building issues. Do you have any idea how those funds are going to be allocated?
Well, given the events of this past summer, a majority of those will probably go towards the summer unforeseen expenses. What happened at the high school really
The
being both
mold
mold
remediation?
remediation and then the insurance deductible for the fire.
Would you say a majority of this 400,000 is going to
I would
fix?
say probably close to 300,000 of that at least.
And for the rest, the other 100,000, is there a plan to increase our social and emotional needs?
That would be, targeted towards our special education department to help meet our students' social and emotional needs.
Okay, great. And so for this total budget, right, this 469,000, I'm under the understanding from your letter that all the line items that
Yes.
we're funding, that's not coming, so that's our first year normally comes from free cash, and the second year goes into the budget, but what we're doing here is putting it in the supplemental budget?
Correct. The first year was funded through free cash
It already was.
last June.
Okay.
That was last year. So this represents the second year of the contract, which, because the contracts were settled and approved and funded in late June, there was not enough time to get them into the budget in the original path of the budget. So this is just going back and saying, okay, the year two costs to supplement the budget that's already passed would be these amounts.
And this covers the whole amount of the contracts?
This covers it for fiscal 19, yes.
Okay, and this is also based on estimated revenue increases? And so
The funding would come from estimated revenue increases,
so
correct?
you're estimating that our free cash allotment of next year's free cash will be less because we're estimating kind of larger amounts of revenue than we normally would?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Di Natale.
I want the public to understand that when the president interjects with Counselor Boschman on this, I hope it's not lost on people that the council does not care about what's going on in the schools, or that we are not understanding of the fact that we have significant building needs challenges. The point of this supplemental is a standard supplemental practice. We are always ahead of the state when it comes to budgetary finance. As it's been stated very clearly, the state came in with numbers different than the ones we assumed, and I assume, Mr. Brooks, we use the governor's numbers.
Actually, in this case, I used the House numbers.
Use the House numbers. So Auditor Brooks and the finance team have to use some sort of a baseline of estimation, whether it be the Senate numbers, the House numbers, or the governor's numbers, and then once all of the Appropriations Committee, House of Ways and Means Committee, and the Senate Conference Committee gets together and finalizes it, every city, town in the district, in the state has to make adjustments. This is standard budgetary practice. We got more money in Chapter 70, which must go to the schools by law, and therefore it changed the net school spending requirement calculation, which is what we're looking to meet, which we did meet in the numbers we used in the budget a couple of months ago, but now with the final passage of the state numbers, we have to up it. And that's where the focus is. The money must go to the schools, and by law, the school committee, your elected school committee, will determine how that $400,000 is going to be allocated, because in the school budget, this $400,000 wasn't in there. So it's almost like it's a supplemental appropriation for them. That is the process. Your elected school committee will determine where that money will go. As to the added revenues elsewhere in the budget, again, contracts are passed after the budget is passed. We have to make adjustments. The adjustments Auditor Brooks has made in the local receipts, I've done a thorough analysis of it based on the last 12 years of revenue data, and all the receipts he's estimating make sense in terms of there are conservative projections, and he's just eating into it a little bit in those conservative numbers. It does not put the city in jeopardy, and while it's being stated that free cash will be less next year, we don't know if that's going to be the case, because there's one kicker here. We don't have a single penny in there for marijuana revenue, not one. And for example, the motor vehicle excise tax increase of $80,000, we collected $4.2 million in excise tax revenue last year for motor vehicles. This year, we budgeted 3.8, and we've already collected $371,000 from prior fiscal years, not including the 3.8. So if we typically have come right around the budget number. So by that standard, we're going to hit 4.1 or 4.2 again this year. So increasing it by 80 grand is not a poor practice to employ. I would have a concern if we weren't hitting our numbers. So I have the utmost confidence in his analysis that I have independently corroborated myself, that these are projections that he is employing that make perfect sense. And I think it's premature to state, I know I said this to you before the meeting, I wasn't crazy about this, the comment that free cash will be reduced. We don't know if that's the case. Is that not a fair statement? We don't know if that will be reduced. Based on all factors.
it depends on how the revenue comes in.
Well, obviously.
And so it'll be reduced in the sense that we've increased our revenue estimates. So there will be some reduction in that, from that standpoint. But if our revenues continue to grow the way they've grown, and if we continue to turn back expenses that aren't used, our free cash could stay the same,
Or it could be more.
or could be more.
Okay. So I will support the supplemental budget appropriation. Again, I don't like using the term that we don't have a choice, but we've already funded the first year of these contracts, so we have to fund the next 2 years. And for the schools, we have to meet our net school spending requirement. This is one of those money orders that I don't flinch at, because whether I have a problem with it or not, we have to do this. We don't have a choice. Thank you.
Counselor Green.
With the additional, the supplemental of the 400,000, what will that put our net school spending per student at now? With the 400,000? Are we over 5,000 per year per student? Are we closer to 6?
I would have to,
The per pupil of the entire net school spending divided by this year's enrollment, or, the enrollment that was used as of last October, is about 12,100.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Boishman.
Chocolo, can I ask you a question? Is anybody held accountable for different things underneath your regime? They're responsible for different things. Like, if you knew the chillers were not working properly, if they were not working properly, and a cheap fix of $45,000, is anybody accountable to you to make sure everything? Because when I worked at General Electric, people had accountabilities for different machines, and they had to go there every year and check them out. They call it a tune-up. They had to give it a
Mr.
tune-up.
President, is this a discussion on school building needs?
It is in school building needs, because you just told the whole people.
Counselor Boishman, I would ask you to restrict your comments to this $400,000, how it's being used. If you have a question about how this $400,000 will be administered, I'll permit that line of questioning, but not a general discussion about how Acting Superintendent Jokola runs his administration. That's not in front of us right now.
It's never in front of us.
Counselor Boishman, my job as council president is to work off the agenda that's in front of us and that's put in front of the public. That's both for our benefit and the public's. According to public meeting law, I have to run the meeting that refers to everything that's listed on this agenda, and I have to ensure that we don't steer off topic. So it's both for your benefit, ours, as well as the public's. What we have in front of us is a $469,000 supplemental budget request.
And Mr. President.
You can ask questions that pertain to this, but
do have-
not beyond it.
Can I ask you a question? What does the first thing say on top? What does it say? Am I reading this wrong? Do I have a different piece of paper? Does it say school expenses? Does it say that, $400,000? Or am I making it up?
Counselor Boishman, you're asking of accountability and building standards.
Isn't
don't
it all
pertain
part of
to
the package?
400,000.
Isn't it?
Counselor Boishman, do you have a question for Acting Superintendent?
Good luck to you.
Counselor Di Natale.
I believe a counselor prior to me asked the question of the interim superintendent about where the money's gonna go. And he gave an answer. That's where the discussion should end. If we're gonna get into every single matter here about every single issue in the schools, I mean, we have a school building needs committee for the school committee that deals with these issues. Again, not saying we don't care. It's not that it's not relevant. It's just pick your point. We can go through every matter in the school budget problem. He has already addressed where the $400,000 will likely go, mostly to the school issues that we've already faced, plus some to special education. And the School Building Needs Committee of the school committee that are in charge of our school buildings, they will address that in detail once we give them the money. That's it. So again, I don't want the public to think we don't want to hear it. It's not relevant to the discussion at hand. All we're responsible for is meeting net school spending. It's the school committee that will dictate where the money gets allocated to. And if there are issues about specific matters involving the individual school buildings, take it up with the principal, the superintendent at another time, or the elected school committee members who are in charge of the school buildings. But if we're gonna go down the road of chillers, let's go down the road of everything else in the schools, and we'll be here until for about 35 years. Okay, so can we, I mean, that's why we're trying to push this. He's already answered the question. Thank you.
Motion to approve 23118.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve 23118. Speaking on the
On the
motion,
motion, if I don't want to pass the $400,000, I don't. I can vote for everything else but the $400,000?
there's a motion in front of us right now to accept 23118. Your option is to either vote for that matter or not. At this point, Counselor Boishman. I have a motion and second to accept 23118. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those in opposition? Counselor Clark, were you a yay or a nay on passing
I'm
this?
more concerned with it being on the finance committee.
No, this is before council as a whole. It will, the final recommendation will, yes.
Okay, that's fine. Then
You are a yes?
I am a yes. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, so one in opposition, Counselor Boishman, the motion carries.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, councilors.